responsibility.
Good morning, I'm Billy, I'm an alcoholic. 4 hours of sleep, ready to go. Not as good a speaker as Larcene, for sure. But I'll make a little PSA for Al-Anon for Larcene, how you can do your part. The next time you're in one of those open discussion meetings, the chairperson feels the need to say, does anyone have a topic? And the topic is their boyfriend's alcoholism, or their parents' alcoholism, or their son's alcoholism. Please raise your hand and remind them that our sister fellowship is the expert with that we have a whole 12-step program that can help them with that. And that comes from the son of an Al-Anon mother, who, I always say, the rest of you say there's nothing worse than a belly full of booze and a head full of AA, and I say there's nothing worse than my belly full of booze and my mother's head full of Al-Anon. And so if you've been a chronic teenage alcoholic and you had an Al-Anon mother, you are very aware. I also want to take 2 seconds to, it's odd to be at Stateline without Clancy, to see him here. And I also want to give a shout out. A couple of weeks ago, I lost my friend Mickey C. in Los Angeles, often at the Pacific Group and member of the Downey Group, and great member of Alcoholics Anonymous, even though a Dodgers fan, a great member of Alcoholics Anonymous. As I was leaving my room this morning, I got a reminder as I walked past the mirror as I was going to the door, because I don't have my golf shorts on and my golf shoes with my shirt to speak and my jacket that are on my chair like it's a Superman phone booth to get on for Zoom, and how good it is to actually, great it is to be in person. No doubt about that. And as I often say, and I've spoken at Stateline a few times, is the rest of AA is so great, so happy that all of us are here this weekend, that we're not in their meetings, driving them crazy with our passion and our spirit of enthusiasm. This is the 1 weekend a year that they all look forward to, that all the passionate lunatics in Alcoholics Anonymous are all in one place. So I hope that they're all having a great weekend. I have a lot of things to cover, and I've only had a couple of days to really think about this. I would ask all of you to just give some consideration to some of the things I'm going to talk about. What I would want you to think about before I start talking about any of this stuff is, any problem in Alcoholics Anonymous is not caused by the newcomer. I hate to let everyone in on that little secret, but the newcomers are not destroying our meetings. The newcomers are not putting enough money in the basket. I could go on and on. When AA gets off track, it is because people with time are enabling newcomers to continue whatever their thought is, and that's why I picked this topic of our chief responsibility and adequate presentation of the program, because that's our responsibility. And when I was saying the other day, sometimes I'll run into some very passionate members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and people who, they have their own rebound leather big book like I do, right? They have their notes in the front of it like I do. They have all their highlights like I do. But they will honestly tell me that they do not think the traditions are important. And they will honestly tell me that bending or ignoring a tradition when it comes to saving a life is okay. And what I try to tell them, and not to preach to them, is regardless of your personal opinion, just please remember where you would be today if on the day you came to AA didn't exist. And maybe you're much healthier than me, probably. But I could tell you that my life would not be like it is today. When I think back to that day that I was offered the chance, and I had been in and out of AA a long time, but just think about that question. You know when you went to your first meeting. You know when somebody referred you to AA, whether it was a phone call to Intergroup or a loved one or somebody. What if on that day AA did not exist? What if it had ended 20 or 30 years ago before you got sober? And that's the only reason that I'm passionate about the traditions. I'm not a rule follower by nature. I hate authority by nature. And I could go on and on. So everything about the traditions is opposite than my DNA. And everything about an adequate presentation of the program is opposite of my DNA. But if I have to honestly think about what would have happened if there was no AA the day I came here, well, that's a big question. And the only thing that allowed AA to be here are those 12 traditions. Remember that the Big Book was published in April of 1939. Published because a few people realized they had the recipe for a miracle in the lives of alcoholics. And that recipe for a miracle so important that they should write it down so that it was here forever. But by 1945, I always say, alcoholics, two things make us an alcoholic: the allergy to alcohol and the mental obsession. But there's a lot of other character traits in human nature that it seems are very common among a lot of us. It doesn't make you an alcoholic, but they seem to be common. Controlling, micromanaging, unique. I could go on and on. By 1945, the 12-step program of action was working fine, better than fine. But, the greatest thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is our membership, and the worst thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is our membership. It's a double-edged sword when it comes to our membership. And there were a lot of problems. You can go to a Big Book retreat, and I've been to hundreds, and you can believe that once the book was published, it was like someone walked out of a mountain with 2 tablets and had the recipe for everyone to get sober, and forever and after, alcoholics were fine, but that's just simply not true. If I could make any progress today, my progress would just be to encourage anyone here to read a new piece of AA literature that you've never read before. Just one. Just one. I have a big book in front of me, but I also have the 12 Traditions Illustrated. If you've never read it, and you can't even bear to read the traditions in the 12 and 12, please read it. The AA group pamphlet. There'll be 150 of them outside the door after, if you want one. The AA group pamphlet, the only thing I could describe it to is when you buy a car, a new car, a used car, whatever, if you go back into the wheel well, there's usually a book covered in some kind of Velcro cover. And when you open that up, it's an owner's manual. That's what the AA group pamphlet is, the owner's manual. Problems other than alcohol, and I could go on, but I really want to talk about AA Comes of Age and Pass It On and Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. I specifically want to talk about a line that someone brought to my attention recently in Pass It On, where Bill W. is faced with the challenge of maybe ignoring a spiritual principle or two. For a very good reason. I want to stress that. For an extremely good reason. And I would encourage you to read that book where he says clearly, even if one or two die, it is more important that I follow the spiritual principles. Because sometimes you hear people say that. Oh, well, that person's life was in my hands, so I had to bend a certain principle. That's just not our history. Now, we're obviously still kind of in a pandemic, I guess, and the last 2 years of AA have been interesting times, and I'm by no means anti-technology. I think a lot of us know that technology has been our friend the last 2 years. But it's also our enemy a little bit. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that because I'm so pro-technology, but I don't want to ignore some very bad things. You know, here's the great thing about technology. There are people in remote parts of the world, in remote parts of the United States and Canada, who have been able to hear the message of the Big Book and the traditions and the concepts and our history that they have never been exposed to before in their entire AA life. And that is absolutely amazing. The bad part is the same thing happens with bad examples, because they're being broadcast all over the AA world. And again, it's the newcomer who we have to be aware of. So the last time I was here, and I want to talk about this, and I want to be very clear, I am open-minded enough to respect any AA opinion that you have. You're entitled to it, and it doesn't matter what I think, honestly. So I don't care if you love the new preamble or you hate the new preamble. It's none of my business. But the fact of the matter is, the last time I was on this stage, there was a different preamble. And today, there is a new preamble. The problem with that is not really that it's changed. The problem is how many people called me, and I'm sure called some of you, and didn't know it was on the agenda to be voted on. I said it last March. Somebody had asked me a question about the preamble, and I said, listen, who knows how it's going to go? I said, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of people who don't like it either way. But the calls that are going to break my heart the most are going to be the calls of people who had no idea it was being discussed. And listen, I'll be very honest. There's lots of AA service that is not for a lot of us. You know, my good friend, God rest his soul, Cliff, from Oceanside, California, he used to talk about that. The only real sin in Alcoholics Anonymous is not finding out what your gift is. Everyone has a gift. Everyone. It's just not finding out what it is. So if you don't like general service or intergroup service, it's okay. I would never tell anyone that you have to do this. What I would tell you you have to do is make sure that your home group is giving those people willing to step into those positions the time to report back at your group and tell you what's going on so that you don't find out again that they changed something else. You know, I want to read something quickly to just honor our history, because AA is a tough balancing act, and some of you know I've served in some leadership positions in Alcoholics Anonymous in the service structure. It's a balancing act between honoring our past and having vision for our future. And sometimes those can be colliding. But if you take the time to properly apply our principles, it can be done. But I just want to read this. This is from 1955, when a group of people, around the same amount of people in this room, were in St. Louis. And this is what Bill W. said. We, the members of the 20th Anniversary Convention of Alcoholics Anonymous, here assembled in St. Louis in July of 1955, declare our belief that our fellowship has now come of age and is entirely ready to assume full and permanent possession of the three legacies of our AA inheritance, the legacies of recovery, unity, and service. We believe that the General Service Conference of Alcoholics Anonymous, as created in 1951 by our co-founders, Dr. Bob S. and Bill W., and authorized by the trustees of the Alcoholic Foundation, has now become entirely capable of assuming the guardianship of AA's 12 traditions and taking over full guidance and control of the world service of our society, as provided in the Third Legacy Manual. We have also heard with approval Bill W.'s proposal that AA's General Service Conference, and I would listen carefully to this line, should now become the permanent successor to the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, inheriting from them all their former duties and special responsibilities, thus avoiding in future time all possible strivings for individual prestige or personal power, and also providing our society with the means of functioning on a permanent basis. So what does that mean? That means that Bill W. stepped aside in 1955, a couple years after Dr. Bob had passed away. That means that the advisors to the trustees are the Alcoholics Anonymous groups. And if your group does not have a GSR and is not participating, then you are no longer a permanent successor to the founder, your group. You've abdicated that responsibility. If your group elects a GSR that does not even go to the assembly or district, you've abdicated that responsibility. If your home group does not allow your GSR to give reports at your business meeting or however you do it, you've abdicated your responsibility. I mean, we can complain all we want that there are certain people who seem hell-bent on changing our message. And again, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter where I fall on this whole people versus men and women. It's not the point. The point is, did AA save your life? And do you feel a little bit of responsibility that AA should be here tomorrow for the person not here yet? I know there's some people my age here, and so you might remember a very famous, it wasn't supposed to be famous, but it was, commercial from a very budget brand hotel. And that line in that commercial became one of the most famous commercials ever. Leave the light on. Simply leave the light on. And that is our job in Alcoholics Anonymous, to leave the light on. It is not to use AA to personally profit. It is not to, if you want to be a member of the recovery community and not an Alcoholics Anonymous, then at least talk honestly about that. At least let people know, well, I'm not really a member of the spiritual society of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm in the recovery community. And those two are not the same. I'm not saying the recovery community is bad. I do lots of outside AA activities that involves the recovery community. But being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous is very, very separate. And we've started to hear some things today that we used to not hear. How about this one? My name's Billy, I'm an alcoholic, and this is my Zoom home group. Love that one. That is being promulgated all over the world. That somehow, without a vote, without any group conscience, we have decided that we now have two home groups. You have one that is in a building or a park, and one that is online. But that is not what our literature says. Now, I am not against Zoom meetings. And I actually support anyone whose home group is digital. I think that is their personal choice. I mean, when I think about certain people that I've met over the pandemic, some people in their 70s and 80s that can no longer make in-person meetings, and they've never felt more connected to AA in a long time, that is such God's grace. So I can't turn that away. It's amazing. But Zoom is not a description of a type of AA meeting. It should actually never even ever be put in front of the words AA or group or meeting. Whether it's Zoom or GoToMeeting or WebEx or freeconferencecall.com or God knows how many there are, it's a location. It's no different than the Tuscany Hotel. It's no different than the University Synagogue. It's no different than the Alano Club that the Hermosa Beach Men's Stag meets in Hermosa Beach. It's no different than the basement of St. Joseph's Church. It's a virtual location. And we don't have a separate set of traditions for different meetings. We have the same great 12 traditions that work either place, which is amazing if you take the time to really look at it. We also, when we talk about to provide an adequate presentation of our program, there's so many things you can easily say that sound good in AA that are horrible. But they've become such part of our language that everyone loves when you say it. Not all things that we say are good for the newcomer. The newcomer, I could honestly admit to you today, I have books on my nightstand that I made fun of in my past, okay? I'm admitting that, okay? I'm telling you how closed-minded I am. I am telling you that there are books in my personal library that I made fun of other people for reading. And it's been a benefit to me. But the reason we only use AA literature in AA meetings is not because we censor what we want people to read. It's because of the adequate presentation to the newcomer. We want the newcomer to simply know what AA is and what AA isn't. There are actually meetings in North Carolina called FTL meetings. I can't say the F word, so you can imagine what the F stands for. But it means blank the lamination. So what does that mean? It means they believe that we've even created a non-adequate presentation to the program to newcomers when they believe that the 9-step promises or how it works are just like 2 laminated pieces of paper that get thrown in the closet after the meeting, instead of showing the newcomer that it comes from our basic text, instead of letting the newcomer leave. So it's not about book banning and censorship inside AA, because our book tells us that there are thousands of books on the library shelves that we should read and take advantage of and take a closed mind like mine and open up. But inside the AA atmosphere, we need to make sure that everything we do is an adequate presentation to the newcomer. We now have certain meetings, and I would be very careful. I think sometimes we say a sponsor's only job is to take someone through the big book and the 12 steps. I firmly do not believe that is in line with what was read today. I believe there is more to an adequate presentation of the program. The newcomer deserves to know what AA is and what AA isn't. And the more the newcomer sees what AA isn't, disguised at what AA is, it becomes ingrained in their AA way of life. If they keep seeing it, they're going to keep repeating it. And an important job of a sponsor or somebody that meets somebody new in AA is, what's a common question that they ask you? Where are there other meetings? Is a very common question. Or what other meetings do you go to? That's a very common question. Or how do I find out where all the other meetings are? Directory, website. But I don't think it sounds arrogant for somebody to want to point a newcomer to the meetings that they think would be best for them. The meetings where there is also an adequate presentation of the program. I don't think there's anything wrong with someone suggesting that to people. But I will tell you this, if you're working with newcomers in your life today and they're attending meetings digitally, you're going to want to know what they're listening to. You're going to want to know what's out there. Because it is cleverly disguised as Alcoholics Anonymous. There are multiple Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, supposedly, that are put on by outside professional organizations, where once your newcomer is in that room, they immediately get a chat asking them about intensive outpatient and other. And I'm not saying that intensive outpatient is bad. I'm a person who would tell you that psychiatrists and therapists are all excellent mental health professionals. But that's not what we do in AA. AA is for fun and for free. The difference between, as some of you may know, somebody, an outside organization, owns the website alcoholicsanonymous.com. The General Service Office, or AA World Services specifically, owns about 180 versions of our name for web addresses. About 170 something. Except for alcoholicsanonymous.com. We still don't own that one. And whether there'll be litigation over that in the future, who knows? But this is what I do know today. If you call the number on alcoholicsanonymous.com, like you believe you're calling an intergroup, you're actually calling a referral service for a treatment center or multiple treatment centers. Somebody who thinks they're calling for fun and for free is now getting asked what kind of insurance they have. And again, we don't have an opinion on what they do, but we just don't do that inside Alcoholics Anonymous. We also have meetings that are being chaired by all kinds of people except alcoholics. That's another trend we're seeing in the digital. Welcome to the so-and-so meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Billy and I'm a compulsive gambler. That is not a stretch. That is not a joke. That is not like me exaggerating the facts at all. That is what is happening out there. And it seems that my advice, which you don't have to listen to, would be the best meetings on Zoom or any platform to send a newcomer to are those that are a home group. Those that are a real deal home group. And it's easy, if you take the time to go to them, to realize which ones are and which ones aren't. The AA group pamphlet, I just want to refer to it a couple of things. There's such good information in here. Is there a difference between a meeting and a group? Yes, a big difference. Says it right here. I could read you the definition here. It's easier to give the Don P. definition. His was a lot easier for alcoholics to understand. Is you can define a meeting by what takes place between the Serenity Prayer and the Lord's Prayer. That's what makes it a good meeting. But that has nothing to do with what makes it a good group. What makes it a good group is what happens between the Lord's Prayer and the next time the Serenity Prayer is read to open that meeting. Is that group involved in taking meetings into correctional facilities or treatment centers? Do they have a GSR? Do they have an intergroup rep? Do they gather together with each other and celebrate each other's anniversaries and birthdays and know each other? You know, I have no problem with telling someone how great it is to be able to make a meeting online if that's what's available. But I also need to know that it's pretty nice that I could sit outside, watch the news, switch over to the History Channel, catch a little of the end of the Yankee game, and then make a meeting. I mean, it's without putting out my cigar, maybe getting up and getting a new iced tea. I mean, it is perfectly made for a guy like me. I mean, you know, Bill's story talks about that we survive the certain trials and low spots ahead by work and self-sacrifice. I don't know about you, but work and self-sacrifice were not my middle name when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not wired in my DNA. So I'm not anti-technology, but I also know we have to watch out that it doesn't become an artificial crutch. And the other thing I would say is this, is AA was based on the community. And again, I love technology, and I believe what Tom I said, when God has work to do, the walls come down. And we have taken down some walls. For some groups in AA, like the deaf, the pandemic has been their Saturday evening post-event. It has been the seminal event in deaf history in Alcoholics Anonymous, that they have been able to participate in a way that they never could from before. So much so that now someone is building, which I think is awesome, a virtual deaf clubhouse that will have all different 12-step fellowships meet there, home groups. But for the deaf, it is amazing. So I'm not anti-technology, but AA was based on the community. And here I'm not talking about the newcomer alone. I'm talking about everybody in Alcoholics Anonymous, because life doesn't usually strike at convenient times. And when I mean life, I mean like when the 95-mile-an-hour fastball comes off that pitcher's arm the wrong way and is coming right at you. And it comes in all different forms. It comes when you went to work that day and you got laid off and you don't know how you're going to pay your family's bills the next 3 months. It comes when you come home and you get a call that a loved one was just diagnosed with an incredibly horrible disease and diagnosis. It comes when you get a phone call that someone you love just passed away, and sometimes in a tragic manner. Life comes in all types of situations, like Bill said. He didn't say some of us have trials and low spots ahead. He didn't say a few of us. It's pretty clear that we all will have trials and low spots. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have an AA community geographically around you. So that if you need to go to a Waffle House at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's my particular choice, that you can go to Waffle House. If you happen to like IHOP or the local diner or Denny's, so be it. But it's Waffle House for me. But AA was created to be local and active in your community. And you can't do that. Now, if you can only go online and you have a reason for that, I get it and I honor it. But I would not tell a newcomer to only be online. I just wouldn't do it. Our language is so important in our history. You know, trust God, clean house, and help others is one of the most famous sayings in Alcoholics Anonymous. But that's our version of the word clean. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we say we're sober. And we honor other fellowships by not using their language. And we're a single-purpose program. And I'll go way far out on this. You know, I came into AA in the early 80s. I was in and out for 9 years. And I think some of the old-timers did some things that caused us some problems back then. Am I the only one who's ever heard somebody speak and they say, the speaker will say they used non-conference approved substances? Anyone ever hear that? Yeah. Just want to make sure that I'm coming straight from the literature. There's no such thing as non-conference approved substances. And to come from the literature one time further, alcohol is not even conference approved. Okay? So I just want to be coming from the literature. When we started telling people that if they mentioned that they smoked a joint or did a line of coke or whatever else they did, that was a traditions violation, we caused a lot of harm in Alcoholics Anonymous. Smoking a little weed or doing some coke, that is just part of your alcoholic story. It's no different than your one-night stands and your depression and your crashing cars and your fighting with bouncers and repossessing of your cars. It's not a tradition violation. Because what's happened is first of all, we pissed off a lot of people by censoring their stories. But we also then, by responding to that, gave the impression that we deal with drug addiction. And smoking weed or doing a little coke or whatever is very different than drug addiction. And what you did and what AA has a solution for is also very different. I want to read a line from the AA group pamphlet. The primary purpose of any AA group is to carry the AA message to alcoholics. Experience with alcohol is one thing all AA members have in common. It is misleading to hint or give the impression that AA solves other problems or knows what to do about drug addiction. So what's that look like practically speaking in the trenches on the front lines? Because who cares what it says in a pamphlet? What that looks like in the trenches is there are lots of people who are alcoholic and drug addict. There's lots, and there's lots in this room. But you have to remember that AA is not the outside recovery world. And AA speakers, it's so funny, the last time I was at this stupid podium at Stateline, sorry Bob, it caused me so much heartache because I said one thing. I said, some of you may not know this, but there are a lot of speakers in AA who are posting their AA speak commitments at your conventions and home groups on their non-AA professional websites. And people were like, no way. And I was like, yep, way, yep. And so what happened a month later? A month later, all hell breaks loose at the Pacific Group, because someone sitting in this audience noticed that their speaker in February had listed on his treatment website that he was the speaker at the Pacific Group. And they told him to remove that. And then what happened? Oh, the first virtual Founders Day where that speaker took my head off for the first 10 minutes of his talk. That's what happened. That's why somebody asked me, I said downstairs in the coffee shop, I had my mask on. Yeah, you know why? Because I don't want to wake up next Wednesday to like 9 text messages from a sponsee that say, have you seen Facebook this morning in that secret group? And then I open it up and it says, oh yeah, Billy N walking around without a mask at Stateline, really practicing the principles. Like, I'm aware. And you know what? That speaker, he has the right to take my head off at Founders Day. He's allowed to do that. But I'm going to take the Bill W. approach. That doesn't mean I'm not going to say it's wrong. That doesn't mean I'm not going to say it's wrong to use AA to profit. And even if you're not profiting, to show the newcomer that there is some kind of affiliation between that treatment center and speaking in AA. That those things are separate. So Stateline is, near and dear to my heart, Bob. It was a real good day in my life 2 years ago. But we do have to watch out for affiliation on many levels. And in this Zoom kind of world, many levels. We don't affiliate with outside organizations, actual or implied. Even if it looks like we're affiliating, we just don't do it. Some of the announcements I hear, and I'll just go this far. Somebody said I called into a Zoom meeting about 2 months ago, and I got in like 2 minutes before the meeting started, and somebody was telling the chairperson, oh, don't worry, Billy doesn't ever come early to these things, which is right. But you know why? Because I don't care what you think about vaccines, and I don't want to hear it in AA. And while you're in this Zoom meeting, you might as well be in a parking lot outside a meeting. And I shouldn't have to listen to that nonsense. And it's horrible for the newcomer to think that that's what we do before a meeting. We get dragged into discussions that go completely against Tradition 10. We have to set a better example for the newcomer. I can't tell you how many Zoom meetings I go to now that take donations, which is incredible. Because we don't take donations in Alcoholics Anonymous. The only time we use that word is as a wrong example in the AA group pamphlet under the section on treasurer. We take contributions in Alcoholics Anonymous, and not only financial ones. We'll even take your contribution of showing up early and setting up chairs. Now, if you have money, we need it. Don't believe that old thing, we need you more than your money, because that's not true. We need your money because we don't take other people's. And that's what's kept AA different than the rest of the world. And don't listen to people who tell you that contribution and donation are the same in the dictionary or the thesaurus, because they are not. They are very, very different. Very different. I always give the example. During COVID, April of 2020, 6 weeks in, my accountant called me and said, Billy, you better file a tax extension. I said, okay. So we filed the tax extension. And I forgot about it. And then October came. And I was having a great day until my accountant emailed me he said, Billy, I need your routing number and account number. Your taxes are due in 2 days. And so I paid my taxes. Now, let me tell you what I did not do. I did not make a donation to the United States Internal Revenue Service. I do not donate to the United States Treasury. I paid my taxes because I am a member of society who lives in this country, and that's what I'm supposed to do as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, is do what I'm supposed to do. But if I want to make a donation, there are some charities that I regularly donate to. I make a donation to Dr. Bob's house every month. It might not be a lot, but I do it every month. I make a donation to Stepping Stones every month. It might not be a lot of money, but even when I can only afford $2, I did it every month. However, when I send money to New York Intergroup for them being there when my life was saved, that's a contribution. When I pay Wells Fargo every month for my mortgage, I don't donate money to them either. I just don't. They're not on my donation list. And we have such a problem with this in Alcoholics Anonymous, and Zoom has only compounded it in that people think we just put the same amount of money in every basket, which that's not what our tradition says. The seventh tradition says every group is fully self-supporting by the voluntary contributions of their, THEIR, own members. Now, is it okay to take money from other people who are visiting a group? Sure, if they're an AA member, and if they feel they want to pay for the coffee they used or whatever. But you don't support your group you don't keep your group going by needing other people to give you money. Your group should be fully self-supporting by your own contributions. And that seems to have gone, a little astray. The other thing I want to say about, just quickly back to the drug addiction thing is the outside world believes that everything is the same. Some of you might think that I'm making this up, but I know at least 4 of you were in the same thing that I was in during the pandemic and heard this. And it was all over AA email lists, AA text lists, every secret group. The new doctor's opinion. The new doctor's opinion. And recorded for everybody to hear and send to their newcomers. And what did this man say? He said that every addiction is the same. It's all the same. Gambling, eating, depression, alcoholism, substance abuse, all the same. That's what all those newcomers heard. And so while I told you we should never kick anybody out of AA and we should welcome people with an uncomfortable chair and a bad cup of coffee, and we should use the big book to allow them to find out whether they're an alcoholic. But the truth is, and there's lots of movies and shows on it right now, the truth is there are a lot of heroin addicts out there that are not alcoholic. And they are dying in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous every day. It's just a fact. It's nothing I'm making up. I'm not exaggerating. It happens in my own life. I have people calling me. As far as our group conscience as Alcoholics Anonymous, we don't believe everything is the same. And I always say, our tradition is a qualifier, not a disqualifier. If you're an alcoholic, we don't care what else you are. Who knows? What's today's date? I got in late. Is it the 10th? Oh, yeah. So is December 10th, 2021, the first room in Alcoholics Anonymous I've ever been in Is there someone here who doesn't have one other problem? I'm looking around. The healthiest person in the world could have showed up to Stateline. I doubt it, but they could have. I'm looking. We don't have a disqualifier. We have a qualifier. If you're an alcoholic, we don't care what other problems you have. And we all know that some people, through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, have been able to help a lot of their problems in their life. But the truth is, a lot of people run into people who are not alcoholic. And sometimes our egos and what they're listening from the new doctor's opinion. Here's what the new doctor's opinion told people. If you have the solution from 2 to 12, it doesn't matter what their step 1 is. That's insanity. That is complete insanity. I'm to the point now where I show my big book on the Zoom screen so that I can show people that in this particular one in front of me, the 12 steps start from the forwards, the doctor's opinion, all the way to page 104. And from the doctor's opinion until more about alcoholism is all about identification. It's all about identification, so that the person will identify and then want to do the work. And we have so many people who don't identify. And the other thing I want to stress is this, and then I'll go to some questions, is there are so many things we can do as AA members to help your community and stay inside the traditions. The first thing you can do is honor open and closed meetings and what they really are. An open meeting, only alcoholics participate. But anyone can attend as an observer. And an open meeting, like a convention, it's the greatest public information display we have to the rest of the world. That's where our message should be on point and on our literature. And I'm not going to tell people how to dress or how to talk, but it should be in a way that promotes Alcoholics Anonymous in a positive light. So that for the social worker sitting there, or the probation officer, or the teacher, or the med student, or the nursing student, that when they run into someone with alcoholism, they're going to know to send them to Alcoholics Anonymous. The other thing we can do is, this is one of my favorites. Well, first of all, I love when somebody who's never been to another 12-step fellowship meeting talks about how bad those fellowship meetings are. They've never been there, but they've heard they're really bad. I just want to assure you, I think we can all agree that the level of passion at Stateline is through the roof. And I want to assure you, as someone, as a trusted servant who has visited other fellowships, they have gatherings that are just as passionate as us. They really do. I serve as a non-addict member of the board of Heroin Anonymous, which is a great honor, and I went to their conference this year, and you can read it online, the main line, and hear heroin addicts who aren't alcoholics who are dying in AA, and AA people are just telling them, well, just come to AA, and they finally went to a fellowship where they can identify, and their life has been saved like mine has been saved in Alcoholics Anonymous. But there is something you can do. Bill W. told us, he actually left us a gentle command. If someone says that there's no fellowship in your area where you live, or there's no one who can take people through the steps, Bill W. encouraged us to do that in a non-AA setting. It could be in your garage, it could be in your backyard smoking cigars, it could be in the Denny's, it could be anywhere. To pass on the solution in a non-AA setting so that they can pass it on to other people. You know, sometimes people accuse people who talk about the traditions or talk about an adequate presentation of the fellowship like they're trying to make rules or not, but at the end of the day, this is about saving lives. This is about not gambling with someone else's life. This is about my crazy ego not telling me that just because I've been through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous does not mean I know what to do with someone who's codependent or a gambler or an eating disorder. And it breaks my heart that new doctor's opinion is out there and getting around and newcomers are listening to it. I want to tell the newcomer, if anyone here does service like public information or CPC, cooperating with the professional community, I want to pass on something from a judge that I met when I was a trustee. And she changed my thinking for sure, and she tries to change other professionals. Is if you come into contact with professionals, it's very common. I'm always fascinated. Some people get really mad when someone asks you to sign an attendance sheet for them. You know those people? They get really mad. I'm always fascinated that someone is so honest that they asked me to sign it. Because I just signed them myself for 9 years. 9 years. I had a pencil, a red pen, a blue pen, a felt pen, and they all look different. And so I'm always impressed when someone asks me to sign one. That's not the point of my story, whether you're opposed to them or for them. But this judge who we were interviewing to be a non-alcoholic trustee, she said, I finally realized how useless those are. She said, I have a new form. And I have everybody in my courtroom who I tell to go to a 12-step fellowship to fill out the new form. I simply want to know your name. I want to know your home group. I want to know if you have a sponsor. I want to know what step you're currently working and what service commitment you have in Alcoholics Anonymous. You could show me a list that you've been to 90 meetings, but that doesn't tell me anything. And she said that she needed to become acquainted with Alcoholics Anonymous so well that if someone like me was standing in front of her with a good rap, that she would be able to know right away whether they were on the AA beam or not. That those were the most important questions. But we need to get that message out to professionals. Because somewhere along the line, somebody told them that the number of meetings you go to makes you better. And I'm not a person who argues about meeting makers make it. They all make it to the same place in the big book. They make it to the fork in the road. Are you going to take the solution or are you going to die? That's where meeting makers make it. You don't need to debate it. And I'm never going to tell a newcomer who has no money and nowhere to go and their friends are all criminals that it's not a good idea to go to meetings every day. It sounds like it would be better for you to be in a meeting. I'm not debating that. But it would be a lot better if you go into all those meetings and you actually know which one of them is your home group, and that you have a sponsor, and that you have a service commitment at your home group. Those are much more important. So I think there's like 14 minutes left or 13 minutes left, and if anyone has a burning question about anything that I said, I'd be glad to respond to it. So there's one right there. I think we'll bring you a mic so that way it's on the recording so the person listening to it doesn't feel left out.
Okay. What's going on?
And by the way, I just wanted to say a thing, because I've chaired a lot of AA meetings. This is Q&A, not disguising your opinion as a question. So I'm just throwing it out there for everybody.
From the solution of Alcoholics Anonymous, I do qualify as an alcoholic. I just want to see, maybe it's in my ego that's blocking me because I don't know if we qualified him, but he just goes back to that. Yet we work the steps I just have gotten bad direction from my own sponsor, possibly. But we worked with Seth, and he's doing really good. But he goes, because in my area, there's nothing else really other than AA. Yeah, he goes to AA meetings, and when we talk, I mean, we work with Seth, and it doesn't seem to be an issue. And yeah, he seems to be, I don't know.
What's your question?
Is that like totally wrong with me?
No, I'm never going to tell anyone that it's totally wrong. What I am going to tell you is this, though. First of all, thank you for your service. And I'm going to tell you that if your sponsee is an alcoholic, then he belongs in Alcoholics Anonymous. We don't care about what your other problems are, as long as one of them is alcoholism. But I will tell you this. It sounds like you have the capability and the experience to maybe start or help people start a 12-step program that might be needed in your local community where you said it's not there. And I would love to talk to you later. And I would also tell people this. If you've never been to another 12-step fellowship, there are some really good open meetings of other 12-step fellowships that are solution-based, where you can go as an observer. And don't believe me. Hear the people who are dying going in and out of the wrong 12-step program for years, and listen to the salvation they found. But let's talk later. Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Right over here.
Thank you, Jim Alcoholic. So my question is, in our county, there's kind of there's been a movement I just found out over the last couple of weeks of motion coming up regarding the Lord's Prayer said at the end of our service events. I know it's a custom, I know the difference between custom and tradition. And I was talking to Jenny outside.
We only have 13 minutes, so what is your question?
The question is, can you shed a little background or a little light on the difference between a custom and what we apply, what we do with the home?
Well, sure. Customs are what Tradition 4 is about. Customs are for cake and meeting format and cupcakes and Earl Grey versus English breakfast tea and a whole bunch of other things I could go in. Do you like sobriety chips? Do you hate them? I could go on and on. Tradition 4 is not for the other 11 traditions. I mean, I got sober at Midnight Madness in New York City. I have seen meetings close with a Wicca prayer. I've seen them close with a poem, with someone burning sage. I really think that is a local decision for the group. Now, it's for a service entity. It's their group conscience. What prayer do they close in? I have a right to my opinion. You have a right to yours. But that is definitely a Tradition 4 local question. However, AA is on record that the Lord's Prayer is not a traditions violation. So, and for those that always accuse it of being a Catholic prayer, we use the Protestant version, just for the record.
Hello, Howard Alcoholic. We recently had a discussion at our intergroup meeting in our county as to whether or not public service announcements, advertisements in all areas where AA is a tradition violation. I believe that to be the case. If we were to openly put in billboards.
Yeah, that's an easy question. No, it's not. We've been doing public service announcements for a long, long time. What we stay away from is sensational advertising. So what's that example? You ever see like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, Students Against Driving Drunk, or other organizations, they'll show a crash car, they'll show an ambulance, or we don't do that. We stay away from sensational advertising. I've seen public service announcements on TV, on radio, on shopping carts. One of my favorite is on that I don't know if anyone else here is kind of a late night drinker, love to go to the diner at 4 a.m. hammered. I love that. I love to go to the diner hammered at 4 a.m. And diners always have those paper, they have ads on them, but they're also a placemat. I've seen one there. What a perfect place for AA to have, a PSA. But it's all about how you do it. But no, getting the message out in a thoughtful way, respectful of our traditions, is what we need to do more of. Yes, sir.
I'm Bill Alcoholic, grateful for everything sobriety. Several years ago, Bill, you mentioned that our contributions were like in the early days 2 bits into the pot. But you see, you said that beer is 2 bits, and now it's about $5, so we need to increase our contributions. Do you still agree with that?
I agree with it as long as you're not putting the same amount of money in every pot. If you were to come over to my house and you were raised like by my crazy mother and father, they were raised by wolves, but they knew that when you visit somebody else's house, you should always bring something. So my mom brought a cake or something, Entenmann's, whatever. My dad would bring alcohol. But when you come into my house, I don't give you a slice of the mortgage. And I don't tell you how much electric you used. And while you might volunteer to do dishes, I don't tell you you have to vacuum before you leave because it's my house. And it's my responsibility. And so I believe that obviously if you can afford it, you should put more in the basket. But you should really put more at your home group and make sure that your home group is being taken care of before you're passing money all over. Again, that's not a newcomer problem. It's not the people who are homeless or have their first, second, or third sober job for $10 an hour who are causing the money problem in AA. It's the people making $100,000 with a BMW in the parking lot and their fancy sneakers and everything else who are still putting the same amount in that they put in years ago when they came in. I mean, that's a sponsorship issue. So, thanks. Anything else? Yes?
Question for you. I'm all about, I hear you on the Zoom meeting, but kind of the beauty of the Zoom meetings, or meetings online, is that now I get to sponsor people all over the United States. And I do have, like you said, one lady who is out in the middle of nowhere, doesn't have transportation, yada yada. Is there a way to find good registered meetings online from GSO?
The best is really the online in a group, but anyone can list there. To myself, it's no different than a regular meeting. The only way to know is to go and to see what's going on there. And thank you for your service. I couldn't be a bigger promoter of, I believe that technology in AA is like a sponsee. Sometimes it needs a pat on the back and sometimes it needs a kick in the ass. And AA needed a kick in the ass regarding technology. And there's lots of people that we can help and reach. But we just have to be careful. It has the same downsides. One of the things I see is this. When I watch TV, and I'm a news lunatic, so I like to watch all of the different newses and kind of laugh at how crazy they're reporting the same thing, but it's also different. But it's never the same person. I'll go on one Zoom meeting in London, and somebody from Los Angeles is chairing it. And then 3 days later, I'm at a meeting in Iowa, and that same person is chairing that meeting. Is that this shouldn't be a contest as to who can chair the most online meetings. The people who actually are a member of that group should be doing service, and that would be my advice, to find real home groups that are meeting online rather than these pop-up meetings that are just attracting lots of newcomers. Lee, you could... I just don't want to be out of line here. You can stop the tape and I can still go to questions, or what do you want me to do? Keep going? Yes.
My name is Ryan, and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a couple months shy of 50 years in program.
Congratulations.
And like most of us, I don't like change. I don't think hybrid meetings are Alcoholics Anonymous. And I guess the question is World Service, how are they coming down on hybrid meetings?
The General Service Board has a committee right now that's working with the online intergroup to determine how online groups could participate in general service, number one. They're also looking for suggestions and shared experience from groups on taking contributions digitally, and also how do you hold hybrid meetings, because hybrid meetings are almost more challenging than in person, especially regarding anonymity. And I can give you an easy example. If someone who works for me goes to employee assistance and I don't know they do, and they tell employee assistance that they have a drinking problem, and employee assistance says, you might want to check out AA. If that employee who works for me goes to a meeting that I'm at and sees my car in the parking lot, they can turn around. They don't need to go to that meeting. They can go to another one. So while we're broadcasting all these hybrid meetings, it is very important that everybody in that room knows that their face is being broadcast to people that they can't see. Now, if we're only showing the speaker and the chair people, that's a different story. But there's lots of considerations for hybrid meetings. And again, I salute your 50 years. And I am a big proponent of local geographic Alcoholics Anonymous. I just know, like this woman over here explained before, that some walls have come down and we've been able to reach some people that we haven't reached in the past. Jerry, all the way in the back there?
How should a Zoom meeting or a meeting that's held on the Zoom format be properly listed so that Zoom's not in the time?
Oh, well, first of all, if you're making a flyer, I would just have the name of the AA group or meeting, and then I would show the Zoom ID as like you would show the address. That's what I would do. That's the easiest way to do it. Anyone else? Hold on one second, because they want to make sure they get it on the tape.
I was just talking about the preamble when you mentioned that with the changing. It seemed like it happened so fast. I was wondering, did they vote on that over Zoom? Because, I never heard anything about it, and I'm not a big fan of changing.
So I could easily tell you the way it was handled at the conference. The last two General Service conferences have been virtual. And I probably would debate that decision shouldn't have been made at 1:30 in the morning. Not a good idea for drunks to do anything after midnight. Never mind, vote on the preamble. But what I would tell you is this. It was not new. If you had a GSR who was actually reporting back to your group, you would have known that they'd been talking about this for 3 or 4 years. It has been back and forth with the Grapevine Board for a couple of years. So that should be a sign to you and your group, hey, we need a GSR that is actually going to district and assembly and actually letting us know what is going on. And I can tell you that there was just a new safety piece made. I don't know if some of you saw it. There was great debate about it. Some people felt it went way over the 10th tradition line as far as political opinion. And a lot of people wrote to the AWS board, and last week they decided they're going to change it. That's what happens when people are active and engaged. But if having a GSR has just become not cool and out of style, then you've kind of given up, your group's given up its right to really have something to say. So That's my message. Whether you like the new word people or you like the old men and women, I'd rather you just know about it. I see a hand back there and over there. Are we still up? Go ahead, Jerry.
Our group contributions are not supporting that fellowship. I took an assistant general secretary position and just wanted to know how I could best serve my group.
Oh, that's a great question on many levels. In a group, specifically AA fellowships, the minute you become dependent on anything other than contributions to pay your expenses, you no longer have a sustainable economic model in Alcoholics Anonymous. I could give you a lot of examples. New York Intergroup, Hurricane or Superstorm Sandy happened a week before the Bill W. dinner. The Bill W. dinner is 125 or 150 a ticket, black tie, 2,000 people. New York Intergroup took a huge hit. Or how about when you walk into some intergroup or central office all over the country and, you could complain that we make too much money on literature, which at GSO, that's just a bad fact. But how about when you walk into a central office somewhere and they sell everything else except AA literature? Like, you can't even send a newcomer down there. You're afraid that they'll leave and become a member of another fellowship. It's like, what happened? Oh, I just went to the central office and I went to the jewelry section and the bumper sticker section and I went to the pen section and then I went to the other literature except AA section. When you start depending on other money, it's so hard to make that up. Impossible. And let me just mention something, because I had so many topics I could talk about. It goes back to probably the worst urban myth in Alcoholics Anonymous: the resentment in the coffee pot. Nothing has probably caused us more damage than telling people, oh, you don't like it? Boo-hoo-hoo, go start your own group. No. Boo-hoo-hoo, stay here and change it. Like, every time we divide a group, we are now paying rent to another place that we weren't paying. And now we're paying another cost for cake and another cost for our anniversary. This is why the AA economic model has gotten so out of control. Contributions is where the majority of our revenue should come from. Anything else gets us in big trouble. And when we say raffles, why not just ask somebody to pay $2 more to go to the registration? Or how about this one? How about the early bird? I hate the early bird registration price. The only person that helps is people with money. I hate to break it to everybody else, but the only people who send in early bird registrations are sober like 30 years. They're not the people who need the discount. We're not helping new people with the early bird registration. So all these kind of gimmicks we come up with on the money side